The one thing that truly defines UFC President Dana White is being fully consistent in how he interacts with his fighters. Stern when he needs to be, but always the beacon of fairness and equitable treatment. Just kidding, of course. The guy makes it known who his favorites are even when he tries his best to appear objective.
You might not like Kamaru. You might not like whatever it is you don't like about him, but you cannot fucking deny that he's the greatest welterweight of all time. Can't deny it.
This is going to start some...
Can't deny it. You can't deny it. You can...
You're hearing it from Dana White, everybody.
Listen, don't like Kamaru all you want. Whatever you don't like about him, that's your fucking deal.
No, I fucking love
you can't deny
it. It's my boy.
You can't fucking deny it.
If you're unfamiliar with the sport of MMA, this might seem like a genuine moment where Dana is giving Kamaru Usman his flowers. But for those that understand the history of the UFC's welterweight division, this is clearly a shot at the consensus greatest welterweight of all time, Georges St. Pierre. Because even if you genuinely believe that Usman would have bested St. Pierre if the two were matched up against one another in their respective primes, actually putting Usman over him in the GOAT discussion in MMA is akin to putting somebody like Tank Davis over Manny Pacquiao in boxing. Because the objective reality of GSP holding the records of most title fight wins and title defenses at welterweight by a very large margin, while being a key figure in taking the UFC brand to new heights during the early 2010s, and being almost solely responsible for the sport of MMA being as popular as it currently is in Canada, dictates that Usman's legacy just doesn't compare. Which in turn makes it obvious that Dana White is still extremely bitter that Georges St. Pierre put himself first and didn't bend to the UFC's every win when he was still active.
Dana is the promoter, he's the face. He's very emotional. Dana will do what it serves him best, to promote the event. He doesn't care if he's bad or good. He want to promote it. He want to make the guys talk about it. So for me, I don't take anything personal. I don't mind.
St. Pierre was one of the first UFC fighters to manage his career in a cerebral way, taking a lot of inspiration from boxers like Floyd Mayweather and Oscar De La Hoya, treating himself like a separate entity that's partnering with the UFC and not just another fighter on the roster that lets the company decide his value for him. Not making it a secret that he was primarily looking out for his own self-interest, which for Dana might as well have been a declaration of war. The relationship really began to sour during the negotiations for a proposed super fight between St. Pierre and the middleweight champion Anderson Silva. An extremely exciting matchup for both the UFC and the fans alike that was projected to be an unprecedented financial success. And while Anderson was fully on board, seemingly begging for the fight, with Dana even using the idea of taking it away as a threat as he expressed how disgusted he was with Silva's performance against Damian Maia.
I can't stand showboating. Listen, if you showboat a couple times, you stick your chin out, you do some things, maybe your style is a little showboaty, but what happened tonight was an absolute disgrace, an embarrassment for the UFC, an embarrassment for the sport, and I don't know if I've ever been more embarrassed than I am tonight. He shows these little signs of absolute genius and greatness. The flying knee to the head when Damian Maia was moving to the right, he threw it like a punch. That's what I think this guy's capable of. That's what I think he could do every second of every round. But for some reason, he chooses not to. He doesn't deserve to fight GSP.
GSP in turn had several concerns that were stalling the dialogue, mainly the issue of weight and how it would affect his performance.
The thing is, if you have to make move, change weight class and stuff like that, sometimes you have to, to reconsider your career. Are you going up or down? Because you see what happened with Jon Jones. Go up, then when he go down, that's everything. That's when his career went like this. And it's a big decision to make because it change your whole career. Changing weight class, change your whole career. Especially a guy like me, I'm an ectomorph type of physique. I have very hard time losing weight, very hard time winning weight. And Anderson Silva used to fight at 168 a few years ago, Not a long time, like he was in Japan, he was fighting in a weight class even below me, that I'm fighting right now. So I'm sure, I think he can play with his weight a lot more than I can.
The off and on negotiations went on for years with both fighters teasing the matchup at different points, which eventually frustrated Dana enough to insinuate to the media that St. Pierre was afraid and was the sole reason that the fight wasn't being made during the media scrum for Anderson Silva's fight against Chris Weidman at UFC 162.
There's no doubt about it. That's a fact. If that was the case, he'd say, Weidman, I'll take that fight. I want that fight. I really think that Weidman's going to beat him, I don't want Weidman to have that fight. I want to be the guy to beat him.
With Silva losing to Weidman, the idea of him fighting GSP was scrapped entirely, but Dana's bitterness over the difficult negotiations remained, and he was noticeably colder towards St. Pierre during the lead up to his fight against Johnny Hendricks 4 months later. And once GSP secured a very controversial victory against Hendricks and followed it up with an announcement that he was indefinitely stepping away from the sport, Dana got on the microphone in the post-fight press conference and really let his feelings be known.
He said, I'm going to take some time off, and I'm going to... First of all, you don't just say, hey, I'm going to take a while off, and maybe I'll be back, maybe I won't. You owe it to the fans, you owe it to that belt, you owe it to this company, and you owe it to Johnny Hendricks to give him that opportunity to fight again, unless you're going to retire. You know, I told you guys a million times, he's got plenty of money. He can retire. That's a fact. He could absolutely, positively do that. There's no, hey, listen, I'm going to go on a cruise and, you know, I'm going to be gone for 2 years and, you know, I'm going to take a hiatus. I'm going to take a leave of absence. I'm going to, whatever the hell it was that he was saying, that's not how it works. It doesn't work that way.
At this point, it became obvious that Dana personally disliked GSP and would have likely booted him from the company entirely if he wasn't one of his most marketable fighters, which probably caused him a great deal of frustration, and his reaction is extremely ironic in hindsight, as we're currently watching him bend over backwards for Jon Jones during an eerily similar situation. But for some odd reason, no matter how difficult his dealings with Jones have gotten in the past, Dana has always maintained a gigantic level of respect for his fighting ability that he simply doesn't seem to have or doesn't want to show for Georges St. Pierre.
Me and Jon Jones never got along outside of the cage. We've had a horrendous relationship for 16 years. Not 16, call it 10, 12.
Well, I'm sure he's happy that you're claiming him as a pound-for-pound number one.
Because it's a fact. We don't have to like each other. We don't have to whatever. I'm not saying we don't have that kind of relationship anymore, but I don't have to like him to realize who he is and what he's capable of and see the brilliance. You know, he is the best to ever fight in a fight, period. Ever.
I agree.
Unless like maybe in the Roman days. I don't know if anybody that fought back then, but since people have been documenting fighting, he's the best ever.
Say what you will about the reasons behind Dana's adulation for Jones, it's clear that there is a level of respect or fear that he currently holds towards Jon that prevents him from calling him out. And maybe it's because of his outward professional demeanor or seemingly subdued personality, but this is not a courtesy that he has ever extended towards Georges St. Pierre, despite the fact that he was no less of a household name. When he decided to come back and challenge for the middleweight title against Michael Bisping in 2018, instead of being excited to see a needle mover like St. Pierre come back to the company, Dana was openly distrustful and critical of his intentions, even making George sign a clause that mandated that he defend the title if he were to win.
To be the man, you got to beat the man. And when a man just goes away, you know, listen, if a guy is, you know, on a run and undefeated and wants to retire, that's one thing. The guy retires the belt. But it's another thing. Well, I'm going to drop this one and jump to 170 now.
Yeah.
That's...
Well, what happens? It becomes and says, it's too big. They're too big. I can't do it. I don't want to do it.
I'm going to be super pissed. And I don't know where we go from there.
Once again, GSP proved that he was shrewd when he came to looking out for himself and was not afraid to be the bad guy as he dropped the middleweight title, wanting to focus on his health and proceeded to retire, leaving Dana even more frustrated, angry, and bitter as he once again found himself on the losing end of the deal while St. Pierre walked away largely unscathed. And the reality of a fighter he doesn't like throwing him for a loop over and over again is probably why he still throws petty shots at St. Pierre to this day, as for the most part, he lets bygones be bygones, even with the most difficult of fighters when he feels like he was the one that came out on top in the end.
At certain times, it was whatever. But looking back, the Diaz brothers have been an absolute blast. They're legends in this sport. They're legends in this company. And you know, these days come with all the guys. And if that's what Nate wants, then we wish him the best.
And it's a weird hill to die on considering just how much GSP carried the company before Conor McGregor. Still being the first name fans associate with the welterweight division over a decade later, the face of Canadian MMA, and one of the most popular MMA fighters ever in general. Undeniable accolades without which I feel like Dana will fully go mask off and trash GSP the way he clearly really wants to. And how much it actually affects him is pure speculation. It may just be a bag background feeling, or might legitimately be driving him insane when he has a moment to sit down and think about it. I guess we'll eventually find out for sure when he puts out an autobiography. Regardless, when you consider Georges St-Pierre's overall contributions to the UFC, it's honestly pretty weird and unwarranted to have any resentment towards him as a promoter at all. But that's just my opinion. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Like the video if you liked it, and if you want to see more videos like this, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell next to it. And if you want to support the channel further, become a member by hitting join if you're on Android or desktop, or the link in the description if you're on iOS.